Okay, so tonight we're gonna work on a shot of DW. This is DW. This is our character DW. We are gonna do some face makeup on him using Mocha roto shapes to create some masks, and then we're gonna use some color correction tools to kind of create a freaky looking shot with DW. So we're already in Mocha. I've already created a mask around DW's face. We are working in the classic setup, not the essentials setup. The essentials layout's pretty limited. We want to work in the classic layout, and we're going to start with this face selection. So one of the things that I was just talking about is making sure that perspective is turned on here, because his face does rotate down throughout the shot. So what we want to do is we're going to go through and we're going to track the shot backwards. We're starting at the back and working forward towards the front. We're going to do this initial selection, and then we're probably going to get in here and do some things like the lips, the eyes, the darks of his eyes, and try to just like make him look as freaky as possible. And that's what we're going to do. So here we go. We're going to start tracking backwards. And I'm going to kind of babysit this thing. If things get too wacky, I'm going to stop it, adjust a little bit. So far, so good. Track looks like it's working pretty well. Looks like we might need to do a little bit of work around the fingers there at the top. We really only care about the face. And it looks like it's doing a good job working in the perspective track. And I'm just going to let it go through its whole track, and then we're going to go back and adjust. And we'll see what we need to adjust. And that's the beginning of the shot. All right, so let's create a keyframe at the beginning of the shot. We'll kind of adjust all of this so that it fits where it needs to fit. I'm going to go ahead and kind of select multiple nodes at a time to kind of get things to go where they need to go. We want to have this kind of just outside his hairline is really what we want. We don't need to have his whole hairline in there. That looks pretty good there. I'm going to bring this in on the side a little bit. Looks pretty good there. We're going to bring this back and up, and then we're going to go in and get kind of nitty-gritty on these fingers and adjust for the fingers. There's kind of a fourth finger in here that we might need to do a little work on later. I'm going to skip that fourth finger for now and just worry more about actually getting a good track on the face. So with these fingers, I'm going to start over here. I'm going to pull these all back into shape. Get this up where it needs to be. There we go. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to do the thing where we kind of split the image. So we're going to go right to kind of the halfway point. Let's click right in the middle. And then let's go in and adjust here too. So we'll come in and we'll adjust our nodes a little bit so that we've got good solid tracking around all these fingers and stuff. That first bit looks pretty good. Bring this over a little bit more. Should be up here, should be over here. And that's looking pretty good. And then we're gonna, so basically the idea here is I'm gonna kind of split all these keyframes in half until we get things really where they need to be. So I'm split this one in the center. I'm gonna move over here and look at this one and just adjust if anything needs a little bit of adjustment. This looks pretty good. I'm gonna move this over just a little bit on his face here. Move this over just a little bit, making minor adjustments. That all looks pretty good. Cool beans. Let me pull this out just a little. All right, excellent. And then let's split these two keyframes, this one and this one right here. I'm just going to kind of go right in the middle. We'll get in here and do some adjusting. This needs to be adjusted a little bit. That's looking pretty good. Again, there's that fourth finger up there. I'm not going to worry too much about that right this second. Looks good. So that track looks pretty nice.
Would be getting the widow's peak, where it's like kind of like there's like hair, but you can still see the scalp like right up from the hairline.
So in terms of like how I plan to grade this is I plan to try to separate, like try to really not affect the black areas, but affect the midtones, right? So like we'll push the midtones a little lighter and try to maybe desaturate his face a little bit so he has a little bit more dead look to him. So I'm going to keep this pretty loose just so we can kind of go through the workflow. We'll run into places where it's like, oh, we should have done a little bit more work there to make this work better. That's just going to be kind of a natural flow of how this goes. We just want to kind of get this close, and then we can adjust things later. Or if we need to, like we can create an additional mask right here and apply the same settings to it, or put it in the same comp with the face, so that we can kind of compartmentalize this work a little bit so that we're not doing everything on the exact same layer and we have some control over individual layers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to select all of my keyframes. Let's see, how do I select all the damn keyframes? I forget. Oh, I know there's a way to do this. Adjust track, clip, input, general, blah, 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 view mapping, render. Okay, I'm forgetting how to do this. We'll roll with it. We'll see what happens. Okay. So we have a decent selection around his face. So let's take this back into After Effects. So I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to close out of Mocha, and we're just going to start playing with this. So I'm going to rename this footage. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rename this one Original. And then this next one, I'm going to say Face. And on this one, let's just go ahead and say Apply Matte. We don't want visible layers. We want the face layer. We got to turn the... There's no thing for it. Okay. So we solo this. Okay, cool. So we solo it and we just see his face. That's exactly what we want. And let's just feather this out by like 20 pixels or so. So it softens the edge a little bit, maybe 30 because we're working in 4K. Soften the edges out a little bit. And now we just have his face to work with. Go ahead, Riley. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not getting it soloed out.
Okay, so make sure you solo the face layer, right? And then come up here and say Apply Matte checkbox. Yep, and then where it says visible layers, make sure that the face is selected.
Okay.
And honestly, even if it's all visible right now, it should work just fine for what we're working on here.
Okay.
Are you still having trouble?
Yes.
Okay. We took the mask that we made for DW's face and we did a little bit of color correction on it. So we've added in a hue saturation to kind of pull some of the color out of his face, and we've added in a levels as well, combined with hue saturation. It just helps him look a little bit more dead, which is good. He doesn't have any really color in his lips anymore, and no color in his eyes or beard. You got to be a little bit careful and kind of just make these changes subtle. If you do too much, it's going to be over the top. So I'm right around like minus 50, 40-ish% saturation, and then in terms of levels, what I did is I kind of like pulled the midtones down, and then I darkened up the lower tones, or the dark tones, the black tones down here too, and pulled that other slider towards the dark levels a little bit, just so we don't get any noticeable lines or edges between what we affected with the mask and the rest of the image, and it's looking pretty good. And you can see the mask worked out really well. All right, so let's do the next one. I'm gonna go ahead and just duplicate the original. And let's do the eyes next. So let's duplicate the original and then call this eyes. And let's go in and start playing around with the eyes. So what I kind of want to do with the eyes is I want to pull the dark out of the eyes. I want to make his eyes look kind of like glossed over, and kind of take the darks of his eyes and make them look a little more white and dead looking, gray almost. So let's get right in there and start working on that. So I'm clicking on the eyes layer, and then we're going to go back into our Mocha. Okay, and we got to make sure that we set full resolution too. Okay, so set full resolution, otherwise Mocha's going to bark at you. Come back into Mocha, and we can continue working. We don't really need the face track visible anymore, and we can we can just shut that face track off for now. And then let's start in the same place, and we'll start with the right eye, and then we'll go and we'll do the left eye. We'll play around with those a little bit.
Do we want to make 2 mats, one for the inner eye and the outer?
Yeah, we could do that. So let's start with the outer, and then we'll go and do the inners, and we'll see how it goes. It's going to get a little tricky with these eyes once they're no longer visible down here. Like after he gets to about here, it's going to be pretty janky. So we might need to do a little bit more of our key work here on the other end. But we'll start at the end, get in there, do the selections around the eyes, and see how she goes. So I'm going to start with the right eye. I'm going to zoom in nice and close and make this a really specific selection around his eyes. So I'm getting in here with the X-spline tool. I'm going to create enough nodes so that I can kind of control these points really nicely over time, and then let's just kind of like move this up around the eye. And then I think the other thing that I'm going to do is select all of these and just relax them down. And then this one this one I'm going to adjust by itself a little bit. This one I'm going to pull out towards the corner just a little bit more so we get a nice solid selection. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to feather this manually a little bit. So when we get in and this starts to move, if there's any motion blur or anything, we can work with that. So the way that we do that is we go up to the white arrow tool in the upper left-hand corner and you say pick edge. And I'm going to select all of the edges and I'm just going to draw out. Actually, we can do that down here with the edge width. So let's just set the edge width to 3 pixels. That'll give the edge a little bit of a blur. So if we look at this selection, you can see that there's a nice little blur around it. And if you want to, you can have this edge blur out a little further. But I think 3 pixels is gonna pretty much do it. So let's start there. We'll start tracking. I'm gonna set this to small motion, and I'm going to set perspective on this again, just so that we get a good solid track. And I might need to babysit it a little bit as we go, especially when the eye starts to disappear. My guess is that we're going to run into some trouble with Mocha and we'll have to do a little bit of key work. So let's start here and see how it goes. And I'm going to track backwards. Okay, so right away I can see that I made a mistake. So I'm going to go back. And we're going to set this to large motion because there's quite a lot of movement and I think it's getting lost with all that movement. So let's set it to large motion and see if it gets a little bit better track here. Looks like it's doing a good job so far. Okay, and so I'm going to stop it here and I'm just going to do some adjusting work. Right eye. And let's get in here and just fix this up a little. And then make sure that you set your white arrow to pick both. If you don't set it to pick both, you're going to run into some trouble. Looks pretty good. Cool. All right, so we got a nice keyframe there. I'm going to start tracking backwards again. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can just kind of see what's going on. See if it's hopping around. Otherwise, this is looking pretty good so far. I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to step this backwards. We don't have very many more frames to go. So I'm zoomed out a little bit. I'm just going to start stepping backwards rather than doing full on, full speed track, just so I can kind of keep an eye on where things are at with all these nodes and make sure they're kind of all sitting in the right place. And it looks like pretty good. There's a few that need to be adjusted a little bit. Pretty good, pretty good. I need to drag them in just a little bit. That looks pretty good. I'm going to keep tracking backwards and just kind of keeping an eye on my eye.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to say.
I guess. Keep an eye on your eye. And I'm going to continue tracking backwards, just kind of babysitting this as I go. Okay, so this is the part where the brow kind of like intersects, starts to intersect the eyeball, right? So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to step back a little bit, and I'm going to start playing with our blurred edges, right? So I'm going to go into pick edge. I'm going to start softening this edge up a little bit. And this is kind of a preemptive softening for when this brow kind of pulls down in front. Of the eye. We want to create a nice little blurred shape right there so that it doesn't look funky when it starts to cross over the eye. If you need to, you can select the pick both again, and you can kind of adjust a little bit. So I'm going to adjust a little bit, and then I'm going to track backwards. Looks decent-ish. And I'm just going to take my time. Yep, and now it's starting to get funky. Take my time. I'm kind of using the bottom of the eye to kind of keep everything in line here. And I'm going to start pulling this brow down a little bit. Track backwards. Now again, just kind of keeping everything on track by using the bottom of that eye. And then adjusting as I need to with the other additional nodes. Okay, and it looks like we're getting some pretty decent edges here now too. So I'm going to go into my pick edge and I'm going to kind of just really stretch these top edges out a little bit, so they feather nicely, and grab these bottom edges too and just work this as I go. If we look at the shape, yep, that's pretty much what we want right there. Cool. Alright, and then I'm going to track backwards again. This is going a little slow, I do know this, but this is kind of what it takes to get this the right way. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to set my arrow to pick both. Just kind of find where this needs to be. And I'm going to move my nodes as I need to. This is going to start to hide pretty good here. There's a decent amount of motion blur here too, so if you need to adjust your edges around the bottom of your eye and stuff, don't be afraid to do that either. And we're going to go back again and just kind of keep on adjusting this as we go, and we should get a really clean eye selection. If you need to shut off your selection so you can kind of see where your eye is, this button right here, show layer outlines, is handy. I think it's Shift 4 or Command 4 or Alt 4, one of those. One of those turns it. Oh crap, now I don't know what I did. Oh my gosh, what did I do? I keep pushing buttons. that'll allow you to shut your selection on and off. You can kind of use that to kind of toggle things and see where your selection's at and help you kind of identify how your track is going. I'm going to come in here and just make a couple of adjustments, and I'm going to start to blur my edges a little bit more too. Pick edge, Shift Command E to pick the edge. Take my edges on the bottom here and blur them out a little bit. Blur them out a little bit over here because the motion blur is starting to take over quite significantly. I'm going to select these 3 little nodes over here too. Shift Command, what is it? B for pick both. Shift Command B for pick both. Pull this in a little bit. Stepping down, I'm going to select all the nodes and kind of master adjust everything, and now we're really starting to get in where that top eye is starting to get occluded by the brow. This is starting to get occluded too, so I'm gonna pull this in a little bit more. Just adjust my nodes as I go. Again, patience and understanding. And I've already forgotten E. All right, cool. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and track backwards. We're nearly there. Move this a little bit. Go in and grab my edges and adjust those again. Adjust over here a little bit. Eye is starting to really change shape now, so we just have to be kind of careful and take our time and work through it. I'm going to toggle these on and off a little bit so I can kind of see where this stuff is ending up over here. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to keep going backwards, and now we're in pretty much like roto land where we need to just kind of take it frame by frame and adjust as this eye gets really funky shaped. It stops kind of being a plane here. What's up, Adam?
Hey. Sorry I'm late.
No worries, buddy. Hang tight, we'll get through this and then I'll get you some files to play with, okay?
Okay.
So Todd, does that mean it keeps the keyframe data for the blurred line?
Yep.
So that's individual. So if you
Yep.
just move that.
Yep, so if you just move the blurred line, only that would move.
Okay, so.
Yep. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Gonna keep on cruising here and just adjusting as I go. I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is I might be being like a little bit overkill here, but I think it's better to err on the side of caution and try to go for a really solid first pass and make this stuff work great right away rather than having to go back and adjust all these keys afterwards because you missed something or something doesn't look quite right, whatever. That looks pretty good. Pull this bottom one down just a little bit, and then we'll keep on cruising. I'm gonna move the whole thing a little bit and then go in and make some adjustments. The eye is really starting to be occluded by that brow now. And I'm gonna pull these in a little bit too. Pretty good, and then we'll step back again, move the whole thing a little bit. I'm gonna toggle these on and off just to kind of see what things are looking like. This is we really can't see that kind of corner of his eye anymore over here on this side. So I'm gonna kind of start slowly working that back in and just adjusting where I need to. His eye is now quickly becoming just like a sliver, which is fine. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's keep on cruising. I'm gonna adjust the whole thing again. And then the eye is almost entirely hidden at this point. So again, I'm gonna kind of turn this on and turn this off and try to get this kind of pulled in where it needs to be pulled in. Looks pretty good. A couple more keyframes and then we're there. Adjust the whole thing. Some minor adjustments here, not too much. I'm going to toggle this on and off again so I can kind of see where the whites of his eye are. And this corner is getting really hidden and occluded here, so I'm going to kind of start turning this into a sliver shape that looks pretty good. And we're going to take the whole thing. And this might be one of those things where, like, we'll set all this initial animation up, and then when we actually see it in motion, we might do a little fade. So, like, we'll fade the effect in. So as his head's getting lifted up, you don't see so much of this masking at the front end. And so you'll start your transparency and, like, fade it up as his head starts to turn up. So, like, this isn't super bright white or weird looking now, because he is pretty heavily in shadow. I'm going to just adjust a few more. We'll blast out these last couple keyframes. The eye is almost not visible anymore, so this is, again, I think I can kind of be a little bit more lax on how precise I am here, because his eye is almost completely not even visible at this point. All right, 3 more keyframes. I'm just going to throw these in, rough adjust. Because I think we're going to fade this effect on, so I'm not going to worry too much about these last few keyframes. Go right there, and the last one. One little rough adjust right there. And then let's go ahead and zoom out and see how it plays. Looks pretty good. Nice solid key. Cool. All right, so let's initially play with this a little bit and see how it rolls out. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go back over into After Effects. And we've got our eye layer, and I'm going to solo my eye layer, and then use the same type of matting that we were going to do before. So I'm going to select where it says visible layers. I'm going to select whole right eye. Face isn't selected anymore. I'm hoping that it'll do what I want it to do. Yep, and it did. Great. I'm going to feather this just a little bit. This one I'm only going to do like 5 pixels because it's already got some feathering on it. And we should be able to... I'm going to play this back at just like quarter resolution just to see how this looks in real time. Fantastic. So we just got the eye, which is great. All right, so let's play around with this a little bit and see how it goes. So let's I don't know, let's do some color correction work on this now too. Let's go ahead and throw in a levels. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the input black and just play around with this a little bit. And I'm going to, yep, I'm at quarter res, great. Pull some of it out. That starts to make his eye look pretty glossy. Just lose a little bit of the color in the eyes. What might be kind of interesting is to see if we can't push the reds a little bit in his eyes, make the veins that are already there kind of pop a little. So here's the difference between before and after. And we could probably take... I'm going to reset this real quick. Try this one more time. I'm just going to take the midtones and pull the midtones up a little bit. Just kind of glossing out the eye a little bit. Again, subtlety is key here. You don't want to go overboard with this stuff. And let's play back that adjustment. And again, like I was saying before, I think what we can do here is we can fade this effect on, right? So I'm setting an opacity keyframe at the beginning, and then I'm going to have this kind of fade in over the course of these like first 12 frames. So it'll start off at 0 frames, and then we'll have it fade on. So his eyes are just a little glossy looking. Yeah, that's really nice. So let's get a little crazy here, and let's try just let's try adding some like veins or something into his eyes, just to see if we can make the tracking data on this eye track work for us a little bit. So we got good. If we've got decent track data, we should be able to kind of like draw in or create some like vein stuff right there, and then utilize the tracking data that we created in Mocha to give it a little bit more freak factor. All right, so for that, I think what I'm going to do is hop out here to the Google machine and find some crazy looking veins. Veins! And what we want is we want something, if we can get something that's on white or black. Oh yeah, this stuff's perfect. Like this one right here, like we can take that, we can go in, we can add some veins in where the eye is, and then we can use the tracking data that we already have to track them in and composite them into the eyeball. This is kind of cool too, the human veins blood thing. That's kind of sick looking. Ooh, this is cool right here. Something that's got a little bit of resolution, like these are 800 by 800. This is 800 by 787, so this might work well. I'm going to try to see if I can grab this one. So I'm going to right click on this and say open image in new tab. Should give us the black and white veins, which it does. I'm going to say save image as, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in with this project.
It does look like this too.
What was that?
It does look like that too.
Yeah. Deja vu. Wait, no, we're going on motif right here. Deja vu, visual effects, hallway. 90% sure that I put this in here.
Need assets folder.
Yeah, face reveal. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit new folder, and I'm gonna do DW face assets. Click create, and I'm gonna save this in here, and I'm gonna call this veins 1. Save. There we go. So we got some veins in there to work with. So let's take those back over into After Effects. I'm going to my project. I'm going to import that file. So we've got the file, and we've got the tracking data. So I think what I'm going to start to try to do is I'm going to bring this in just over the top of the eyes and kind of set this up where I want it. So we're going to use blending modes here, right? So we're going to turn the blending mode to, I believe, multiply. Yes, which will give us, it will get rid of all the white space, and it'll give us just the black veins. So, and then the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a levels correction on this, because you can see there's a little bit of a bounding box area around the JPEG. So if we just crush the white out a little bit, or the black, whatever it is. What do you need me to do here so I can get rid of this garbage? Should be the white. Why is it getting whiter? That's weird. Oh, there's kind of like a happy medium right there on that peak is where you want to be. If you go too much, it'll start to show up really bad. If you go too little, you can see the bounding box around it. Right there is about perfect. All right, and then I'm going to rotate this a little bit and scale it down. We're going to bring this up over his eyeball. Be cool if it was just like flailing around out of his eye or something like that. Come up over his eyeball. I'm going to scale this down a little bit more. And I'm going to set the resolution to full so I can actually see what's happening here with these veins. Scale it down just a little bit more. Cool. Let me think here. I think I'm going to move the anchor point to the bottom of these veins a little bit, and then just kind of like rotate these. Just find a happy place for them. A happy little place for these happy little veins. Go in DW's poor eyeball. And then I'm going to add just a fast box blur to this, because obviously we don't want them that sharp. They need to just be softened up a little bit. Like so. And then I think the other thing that we can do is we can colorize them. So if we go into hue saturation, I think this will work. Colorize. Yeah, that's what I want. I want them to just be a little on the red side. So if you do the colorization, you can use the colorize hue, and it'll just kind of colorize the veins to a red color, which should look pretty cool. So let's see what happens if we go into Mocha and say, where is it? Tracking data. And then let's go, I'm going to go to transform. So I went into tracking data, set the export option to transform. I want the layer export to go to veins 01. And then I want to just select the right eye as the tracking data that I want. So when we say create tracking data, it should do that. And then hopefully I should be able to apply export. Oh, it did all kinds of funky shit. All right, let's see what happened here. Okay, so it's tracked in, but we need to do a little bit of work here. Let's back up here a little bit. I think if I just do... I really only want... Okay, so we might be able to do this. Let's open this up and see if this is creating data for us. Okay, perfect. So here's what we're going to do. Instead of applying the tracking data to the vein layer itself, we're going to use our pick whip and our position to make the tracking data kind of work only on the parameters that we want them to work on. So we've got scale, X, Y, we've got center, we've got rotation, we've got bottom right, top left. That's these like 4 corners if you were to corner pin this stuff. I think we can use the center data to kind of control the position of our veins, right? So if I hit P for position and then Alt click on the stopwatch, that will give us this pick whip option, right? You guys remember this from expressions last time? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick whip the center data and hit return. And it's moved our veins a little bit, which is fine. We can work with that. So then what I'm going to do to fix it is I'm going to grab the anchor point and I'm going to change the anchor point. I wonder why I made the center way down there. That seems a little weird to me.
That's where the center point for the comp is. Because when it tracked, it has the it runs along.
That's right. It wants you to use its 4K garbage to make it work. So I'm gonna go there, give that a shot, and see what this looks like. Oh, that's working great. That's just working awesome. Oh man, do we really need to make a 4K layer and do all that garbage to make this work right? export options, blah, 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 compositing options, effect opacity, blah, 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 blah. See, it's so weird to me because the tracking data from the eye, it showed the 4 corners right there, and it's tracking it to the center of the comp. It's doing that stuff. All right, so let's monkey around with this a little bit and see if we can't make it work. So I'm gonna go back a couple steps and undo this so that it's sitting where I want it. Yeah.
Well, if you made the mask a comp, like a pre-comp, and then you drop that inside of there, that way you wouldn't have to also you wouldn't have to like cover up the lid or anything. It would be all in one.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. I want to just figure out how to get this tracked in at this point. So I think the way that we need to do this in order for this to work right is we need to put it on a 4K comp. Because we're working in this 4K comp, we have to blow these veins up and put them in a 4K comp. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do that right now. So I'm gonna take veins, I'm gonna create a new composition, call this veins, right eye, and I want this to be, well, it needs to be 4096 by 2160, 23976 square pixels. And I want it to be the length of this composition, which looks like it's 2 seconds, 12 frames long. 2 seconds, 12 frames. Okay, and then we'll bring the veins in here. And we'll scale them way up so that they kind of fit the composition. This is the stuff that I wish they'd kind of fix in Mocha so that you didn't have to do finagly weird garbage like this. So there we've got our veins. They're in the composition. Let's go back over to Mocha and let's see if we can't make our veins right eye comp actually track to where our eye is. So I'm going to shut this composition off. Zooming out a little bit. Oh shit, our composition isn't 4K. It's 4096 by 1728, so let's do that. Position settings, 4926 by 1728. Click OK, and then we'll scale this yet again to make this work. Okay. So here we are, we've got our eyes, we know there's good Mocha data there. Let's go ahead and create some track data, and then what we're gonna do is, instead of the transformed export, I'm gonna say corner pin support motion blur, and I'm gonna export this to vein right eye and hit apply export. Did it do it? It did. And put it in the center of the frickin' thing for whatever reason. That's weak sauce. Why the hell did it do that? See, yeah, we're really winning right now with our tracking data. This is just super helpful. All right, so we've done some additional work on this shot. Went in, we did some eye socket stuff. I've added a texture over the top of his face. I'm going to talk about how we did that. So here's the original footage, and here's where we're at right now. So we've definitely deaded him up quite a bit, which is good. I'm going to go in here to the face and kind of show you how I managed to overlay this icy texture, right? So we've got this texture layer right here where we laid some veins on it, and there's an icy texture back there, and we've laid that over the top of his face right here, right? So it adds this kind of nice patchiness and veininess to his face, makes him look a little more dead. Cool. All right, so here's how we did that. Go into Mocha. Let's make sure we're looking at full resolution, because Mocha doesn't like it when we don't. Go full res, hop into Mocha. All right, so we have our face track that we did. And then what I did is I turned on this little button right here, show planar surface. So what I did is I took the planar surface and I kind of like pulled it so that it would cover his face. And I'm going to adjust this a little bit so that we don't see those edges that we saw earlier. I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. Kind of trying to keep it outside the bounds of the face selection that we're going to have. So what's going to happen is this texture maps to this planar surface. That's why we don't see any of the corners or anything in here. All we see is the stuff that we matted to the face itself. So we adjust that planar surface. Then if we scrub over this, oops, you need to actually scrub over it though. When you scrub over this, you can kind of see that planar surface moves with his face. It's not the greatest, but it'll work because it's a subtle effect. And we kind of lose it up here a little bit. So I mean, maybe what we do is we adjust this planar surface for the first frame rather than the last frame. So what I'm going to do is set this up so that it kind of creates a planar surface where his face would be on the first frame, and we'll go out to the last frame, and now we should be pretty well covered. There's a little bit down here at the bottom that we're getting, so I'm going to go back to that first frame and just pull this surface down a little bit, and then let's scrub through and see how that works. Should be pretty much all covered all the way through now. Cool. So if we save this now, we're going to notice a little bit of a change when we go back to our original footage. So I'm going to go close out of this, and it's updating right now. So things change just ever so slightly. We shouldn't see that. Yeah, oh, it's still there. Weird. Oh, because we have new data and all this stuff. Okay. Not the end of the world. I mean, what we can do with this is we can take the icy layer, and we're using the face matte to matte this thing. So our matte looks like this. Anyway, it's pretty freaky looking. It looks pretty good. If we play this back in real time, this is what it looks like. So it's pretty decent, and it's a hell of an improvement over the original shot. I mean, our original shot looks like this. So we've brought the deadness, which is great. Okay, pausing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the other eye socket. So what I did is I took the original footage and I duplicated it and I called it left eye socket, which is why we're seeing just the original footage. So I'm going to go in, back into Mocha. I'm going to set this to full resolution so that we can see it. Go back into Mocha. All right, so we have our original facial track. We don't really need that. I'm going to shut that off. And I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, kind of where I want to do my track. And we're going to use the X-Spline tool, and we're going to draw our selection in. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to do a select all to grab all of the nodes and just relax them a little bit. And then I'm going to do some minor adjusting on some of these to get it to its kind of final shape. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the nodes, and then with this edge width right here, I'm going to go ahead and just give this a nice soft edge. So when this is what the selection will actually look like. So it'll have this nice feathered edge on it. If we shut off the bounding box, it'll have this nice feathered edge on it. We can feather it a little bit further inside of After Effects, and that's what we've already done. Shut off that mask so I can see what I'm doing. All right, and I did this kind of in a weird spot. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same thing with that planar surface. I'm going to grab the planar surface and kind of create where this plane would be so that it will kind of capture perspective. And that's the next thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to capture perspective. So I'm going down here to the motion tab and capturing perspective. And then I'm going to go ahead and track forward and backwards. First, I'm just going to go forward because this tracked really cleanly before, so I'm assuming that it's going to do the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and track forward here. Sweet. That all looks pretty good. I'm just going to make a minor adjustment right here. You can see that like part of the nose kind of comes in there. That looks really nice. All right, now I'm going to track backwards. And this should do a pretty good job. And it is doing a pretty good job. Cool. Make a couple adjustments here too. I'm just going to drag these 3 points down here so it kind of grabs onto where the eyebrow is. And then I'm pretty happy with how it looks. So I'm just going to play through this real quick and see what it looks like. Acceptable. The only thing I think I would change is back here. You can see that the edge kind of dips in where the eye is right there. It honestly probably won't be too big of a deal, but I'm going to take this right hand node and just stretch it out a little bit. And that should help out a little. Yeah, now it's going to be a little more consistent. Cool. Alright, so now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to stop this, we're going to save this, and we're going to close After Effects, and we should have just the eye socket. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say Apply Matte, and now you can see that our matte is the only thing visible there. So if we solo this, the only thing that we have is that eye socket where we did the eye. And so now, I mean, we definitely need to feather this out a little more, so I'm going to feather this by like 50 pixels. That's nice and soft. I might even go a little higher than that. 65. Cool. And then all I'm going to do now is just take the levels and the saturation, copy those over from the right eye socket, and paste them on the left. And then I think we got to do a little work in terms of opacities. Yep. Opacity here is down to like 65%. I'm going to go even lower. I think this is a little too strong as it stands right now. I kind of want to soften it up, make it more subtle. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. The other eye still seems a little stronger. So I'm just going to kind of make them match best I can. Looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go in and do the left eye as well. But let's go ahead and just look at this. We'll play it back at quarter res so we can actually see it. Here we go. Oh, I see what's going on. My transparency is changing on my right eye socket all over the place. That's fun. Okay, so let's do this. We want this to be at like 60%. And then these other two will delete out. So I'm kind of having these effects fade up as the head gets turned. I don't even think we need to worry about that opacity change here. I'm just going to set this to like 50%. Play it back. It's looking pretty good. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to incorporate this other eye. So we already have a nice eye kind of edit right here, and we've already got a Mocha set up in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into that Mocha, so I'm on the eyes layer, and if we look at this, it's just that one eye. I'm going to go into the eyes layer, go into Mocha again, and we're going to cancel that. Let's make this full again. All right, go back into Mocha, and we're going to do the left eye this time. So we've got right eye socket, we've got right eye hole, we've got the faces in there too. We don't really need all that stuff, so I'm going to shut these off for now. Actually, we do need the right eye needs to be visible because we want to see that in the layer that we're working on. So that'll make it so that that mask is still visible. So these eyes are a little bit tricky, as we saw earlier. I'm going to go ahead and scrub all the way to the end of the comp, and then we're going to go ahead and zoom in and start working on selecting this eye. So I'm going to grab the X-spline tool again and come in here and just start doing the eye selection. I'm going to try to keep my node count relatively low. There we go. And then I'm going to relax all these at first and make some additional adjustments so that they kind of fit right where I want them to fit. Get back in there. This is looking pretty good. And the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the edge width. So I do want to do that to all of the nodes. So I'm going to hit select A, or select all, and I'm going to set this to 3 pixels. I'm going to push it just a little bit more so we've got a nice blurred edge on that so it's not too harsh and sharp. And then I'm going to set my planar as well, so in case we want to like put any funkiness over the top of this thing, we can. So the planar data, I'm just going to kind of make a rectangle around this and kind of make the rectangle as nice and even as I can, and it's going to go right over the top of the eyeball. Once I kind of get that plane set up,
Do you know if you can change that to like a circle?
I think it only works, it's because it gives
Oh.
corner pin data.
Okay.
So I think it only works as a box.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna I'm overshooting this a little bit so that if I do want to lay any textures or anything over this, I can. I'm really trying to keep this pretty even so it doesn't have too much perspective on it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn perspective on, and then we're going to track backwards and we're going to track this thing out. So this last eye was a little bit challenging to work on. So far so good. It looks like it's doing a good job tracking. So right here I'm going to stop it. I'm going to make a few adjustments. I'm going to come in here and adjust. Shift 4. No, Command Alt 4? Alt 4, okay. So Alt 4 turns your selection tab on and off. So we'll come up here. We definitely have to do some adjusting here. Oop, I don't want to adjust my plane too much. I'm just trying to grab these nodes, not the plane. I can shut that surface off so that I don't touch it. Get in here, figure out where these are going. You can relax this a little bit, pull it into the corner. Just kind of adjusting all the way around the eye. And then we're going to start tracking backwards again. Stop again. Looks pretty good. If I hit Alt 4 again, I can kind of see where I need things to go. So we're starting to get into the brow of his eye now. Brow, bro. There we go. Looks pretty good. Let's pull this up a little bit. Pull this up a lot a bit. And then move this in as well. This looks a little on the sharp side here. And then we're going to continue to track backwards. Honestly, that looks pretty dang good. Just making some minor adjustments here. Track backwards some more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of set the last frame. So I'm going to move this whole deal and then make some pretty heavy adjustments on our nodes so that we're only really seeing the parts of the eye that we need to see. That honestly should be pretty good. Cool. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just kind of scrub through this and see how we're looking. Looks pretty good. I'm going to get in here. So what I'm paying attention to now is like where the eyebrows are right here, or where the eyelashes are right here. I think we need to just tug this down a little bit. Otherwise, that looks pretty good. Yeah, looks good. All right, cool. So now we have the new eye data, which is good. I'm going to go up here and name this left eye hole. So we know it's the whole eye. We were going to go in and do some work there on the irises as well, just to play around with that. And then I'm going to save this, and we're going to go back out to After Effects. And now we should honestly see that pop right in, and that's exactly what happened. So because we have this apply matte set to all visible layers, it's automatically grabbing our new data that we created for that eye. And now if we solo this, we should just see the eyeballs, which is exactly what we see. And if we play this back, we can get an idea of how this is looking. Looking really good. Cool. And then I'm going to do a little work here. I think I did some opacity work on the eyes. We're going to drag this down to like, 30% or so that it's a subtle effect as it comes on. And then if we unsolo this, we should be able to see this in real time, see what it looks like. Cool. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. All right, let's go in and play around with the irises a little bit now. Again, here's our before and after. This is what we look like before. And, well, let's just have fun with this and we can see what it looked like after. So I'll leave the before on at the front of the comp and then turn the after on halfway through so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, good and dead. Nice. That's looking solid. Cool. So there's actually quite a bit of additional work that we need to do on this shot to make it finished. In the film, if we pop back over to the film itself and go to the final sequence where we see DW in the hallway dead, if it will show me what I want to see. I think it's in this. Nope. It's not in here. It is in this sequence right here. So here we are in this sequence, and I think this is the shot we have with DW. No, it's actually a couple shots before. Okay, so this is the shot I was talking about. So you can see there's a giant blood splatter behind his head right here. And this is a shot that we did in the last After Effects class. So what we need to do is we need to comp this shot. You see he's wearing the helmet, and then she goes to lift up his dome, and that's the After Effects composition that we're working on right now. And I believe... Okay, then it gets all crazy after that. So what we need to do is we need to comp the blood in behind him too. So we have some roto work to do there as well. So let's go back over to the After Effects project. So what are we going to do to get the blood comped in behind him? Well, we're going to have to definitely do some work in terms of roto around his head to get that blood to go in behind him and around his shoulders. And we're going to have to do some tracking work as well. I think what I'd like to do right now is just focus on the makeup. So I'm going to go in and do some work on these two irises. So it's kind of rinse and repeat. It's the same kind of thing we just did. I'm going to take the eyes layer and duplicate it, and I'm going to call this irises. ES, plural, right? All right, that's what we're going to call it. Irises, plural. Cool. Okay, and then we're going to go into the iris layer, and we're going to go ahead and go back into Mocha only after setting it to full resolution. And we're going to go ahead and track the irises of his eyes. And again, I'm going to start on the last frame and work backwards. So zoom in here on his right eye. I'm going to go ahead and grab the X-spline tool. Actually, I could probably just grab... I'm going to do the X-spline tool. I could probably grab the elliptical tool, but it's not a perfect circle, so I'm going to use the X-spline tool instead. I'm just going to kind of like create very few nodes so I can get this to look the way that I want. I'm going to relax all of these quite a bit, and then I'm going to zoom in here a little further and adjust everything so that we get a good clean selection. I'm going to keep the red selection part kind of inside that fringe of the eye, and then I'm going to kind of custom drag out the blurred edges. So that's kind of what I want right about there. Just like really relaxing these so that we can get a nice clean. I don't know, I think I need to add more nodes in. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm just not happy with the way that looks. X-spline tool, come in right here. I'm going to use a few more nodes this time just so I can get a good round selection. There we go. Relax all of them and then adjust. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do some custom edge work on these. So I'm going to go ahead and say pick edge. I'm going to grab my edges and draw out kind of the soft part of his eye, so it's got a little bit of blur to the edges. There we go, that looks pretty good. Egg salad sandwiches, cool. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to save this real quick, and then we're going to track backwards. And I'm going to stop and adjust a little bit. Now the top of his eye is starting to close. I'm just going to adjust these as we go. Go, good. Keep on tracking. And we're losing it a little bit here. Select all of these and scoot them all down quite a bit here. Work on my edges just a little bit for these parts. There we go. Looks pretty good. And then we'll keep tracking backwards. I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit. Again, I'm going to come in here and adjust. Alt 4 so I can kind of see what I'm looking at. Still looks pretty good. I need to bring this edge in a little bit over here. I'm going to set the tool to pick both so that I can come in here and pick these edges and just kind of adjust them a little bit. Looks pretty good. And go ahead and continue to track backwards. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to start to get some serious eyebrow stuff going on in the foreground. So we need to take this and kind of dip these down. Move this up a little bit. There we go. I'm going to go kind of frame by frame here and just take my time with it. I don't have a lot of frames left. This is again kind of getting a little funky with his brow. I'm going to adjust these where they need to go. That looks pretty good. Cool. Keep on tracking backwards. Alt 4 to shut it off and turn it on. Okay, so you can see that I got like quite a bit of other stuff selected here, so might need to back up a little bit. Check this here. Yeah, I'd need to pull these in on the side a little. Oops, fudge. Just kind of fine-tuning the shapes a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and track backwards. And then I'm going to check this again. Yeah, now the shape's getting really small, so I'm going to come in here and kind of like cinch everything up here. I think that is about where we're at right now. Yep, looks pretty good. Looks like I'm grabbing a little extra over here. Kind of move this a little bit and see how that goes from here to there. That looks pretty good. And I'm gonna go ahead and just go single frames at a time. Zoom out a little bit. Still is looking acceptable. And I will probably be fading this effect up from here, so I'm just gonna track it down and maybe move the whole thing in just a little bit. Now we're looking at his brow. We're not even really seeing the eyeball. Zoom way out and just check this as we run it forward and back. And I think we're pretty there. It looks good. We'll test it out, see how this first eye goes, and if we need to make any adjustments, we will. Cool. Okay, so save this. Close this out. We're back in After Effects. We've got our irises plural. It's already got effects on it, so we should be able to just single this out, and then we should be able to really make this look freaky. Yeah, there we go. Like making it good and dead. Perfect. I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to soften this up a little bit because we did a pretty damn good job of feathering all this stuff. Visible layers, yep, that's what I want, only the eye, I don't want anything else. So if we solve this, we should just be seeing that eye, and that's a nice kind of upgrade from what we had before to make him look more dead. Oh, that was a good pop. All right, and then we're gonna go in and do the other one. So the other one is same deal. Let's go through it again. So into the irises, go back into Mocha. Let's go to the end of our comp. Go to the end of the comp. We will zoom in a bit and do the next one. Okay. A little more. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Select them all, relax them down, and then make adjustments. Pretty good there. And then I'm going to say this is right iris, left iris, and then we're going to go ahead and give it some edges, 3 pixels of edges. Then I'm going to go in and pick the edge myself. And just kind of pull the edges on the bottom out a little bit, and then go back to pick both and cinch these up ever so slightly. There we go. Cool. Looks pretty good there. I'm going to save it, and then we're going to track it out. All right, here we go. Let's track it. Stop right there. Some minor adjustments. Looks good there. Keep on going. stop about here as well. Again, make some minor adjustments. Looks like we need to pull these guys out just a little bit. Flex this down just a little bit. Good deal. Keep on tracking backwards. Okay, I'm gonna stop again, make some additional adjustments. Should be right about there. And we'll keep on tracking backwards. Okay, now we got our eyebrow in here, so I'm gonna start pulling some edges down. So I'm gonna pull this down just ever so slightly, and then we're gonna bring this in for the eyebrow. Oh. Itchy eyes. All right. Cool. And then continue to track backwards. I'm going to go frame by frame at this point, just so I can kind of babysit this. Make sure that I'm not doing too much color work on this brow. Cinch these in where they need to be. Again, Alt-4 is going to come in really handy for you to kind of see where things are at. Keep on cruising backwards. Looks pretty good. Cinch these down a little bit. Bring this in a little bit. Cool. A few more tracks. And it's starting to get really occluded now. I'm going to go ahead and just adjust this up, and then I'm going to grab the whole top of this thing and pull it all down. I'm pretty sure that's about all we're seeing, and it is. Cinch this in a little bit here. Yes. There it is. Cool. That's looking really good. Just a minor adjustment there. A few more tracks. We're not even really seeing the eye at this point, and then we're there. And let's go ahead and save it and head back over to After Effects, and it should pop right in there. That's in it, and it is, and it does. Sweet. So let's do our original look at this thing one more time, and we can kind of see the before and after. Set this down to quarter res again, and we'll play this back. So there's our original, and here's our final dead look. Oh yeah, that works. Works real nice. So the key here is subtlety, right? Like we made changes, but we weren't pushing things really, really extreme. We're pushing them pretty lightly. Like, you know, watch your transparencies. Don't push things too far. This'll work really, really well in terms of like selling the audience on the fact that he's dead. Hey Connor, would I get a director sign off on this? Yeah. Looks good and dead. So the next kind of steps for the shot would be we'd need to go in and do the kind of same kind of color work on his neck, so that his neck and his ears, which we really haven't done right now, aren't, you know, a nice brown, where his face is, you know, nice and pale and freaky looking, dead. And then we'd need to go in and we need to add that blood splatter behind them. Sean in class brought up the idea of maybe adding a bullet wound or something onto his head, which is totally something we could pull off. I'm tempted to give it a shot right now, but it's time to wrap up class. It's already 8:50. Time flies when you're having fun, people.
Maggots and flies too.
Yeah, he wants to add maggots and flies too, but I don't know if we'll go that far. If we were, let's see, those of you who are willing to stick for a few minutes, it's fine. Otherwise, I'm just going to give this a shot and see what happens. I'm going to take the original. I'm going to call this, well, first I'm going to duplicate it, call this bullet wound, click OK. I'm going to pull this all the way, well, yeah, I'm going to pull it all the way to the top. I'm going to go into Mocha. Cancel that, go into Mocha, go to the full thing, click on this, and then let's see what we can do here. So for this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to like track I need to think about this for a second. So there's not, we'll see how this flies. So I'm gonna shut this off and just, I'm gonna grab the circle tool, and I'm just gonna like draw a circle right around his forehead area right here. And kind of move it so that it's over here. So the whole idea of this is, like, the other thing you want to do here is you definitely want to get your planar perspective in. So I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to kind of like get this plane to match up. So I'm going to rotate this plane too, so that it kind of fits this side of his head. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, I wonder if I can, yeah, do the whole thing. I'm going to blow the whole plane up a little bit so that whatever we end up tracking in here, if it's a bullet wound that we pull out of an image or something like that, hopefully we'll be able to make that work with the perspective corner pin track with motion blur. So I'm going to give this a shot, see what happens. I'm going to track forward. I don't know how well it's going to work on perspective because there's not a lot of perspective data in here. You can kind of see, yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm just going to go ahead and track it and see what happens. We'll flop a really makeshift bullet wound in there and see what happens. Looks like it's doing an okay job. Perspective's working. It's going to get funky when her hand starts to come into frame here. Groovy. There it is. Okay. So we've got a track on there. I'm going to go ahead and set this and give this a nice soft edge that kind of goes out to the edge of the track. And then hopefully that gives me the edge all the way through. And it does. Cool. I'm going to save this. I'm going to close this. And then we should, if we solo, well, let's do this. We're going to use this as tracking data pretty much only, plus the masks. Well, let's go ahead and say view matte, because we're going to need the matte. I'm going to pull the transparency back on this and throw up the original footage with it so we can just see how this tracks to his face. It looks like it's doing a pretty good job.
Is there anything else?
No, finish your shots.
Finalize them?
Yeah. All right, so I found a bullet wound, which is what you're seeing in the background right now. And I'm going to select it in Photoshop and cut it out. So open, recent, bullet wound JP2, whatever the hell that means. JPEG 2000. All right, cool, I guess. And then I'm just going to grab the lasso tool and kind of lasso around this whole thing. The blood is kind of a nice touch. So I'll come in here and kind of draw a drip around there and select all that. I'm going to invert my selection and delete everything outside of it. Wait, well, we're going to duplicate this first. Duplicate this layer, click OK. Go into the background. I'm going to get rid of the background because I don't need it. And then in here, I'm just going to delete out everything around it. Crop it down so that it's only the section that we need, and then I'm going to save this as a PNG and bring it in and see if we can get it to look halfway decent. This will be in the lecture too, guys, so if you want to see this part, just pull the lecture up this week and check it out. Alright, so there we go. We've got that. I'm going to save this as a PNG file. That way it'll have transparency on it. Fastest saving, very good. I'm going to quit Photoshop. I don't need to save JP2 anymore. We'll get the bullet wound off of our screen. This is just good stuff right here. All right. We're going to go over here. Have a good one, Zach. And then we're going to go ahead and pull in our file that we just made, the PNG. There it is. Then what we're going to do is we're going to make a new composition, 3840 by 2160 at 23976. That's all perfect. We're going to call this bullet wound. We're going to click OK, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our bullet wound, drop it in here, and we're going to scale it up so that it fits. This here.
Other one good for a ball map.
We'll see if we can get this to work first. So here we go. We've got our bullet wound on there. Let's just see what happens if we throw this down into our composition. So there's our bullet wound. We're going to unsolo that for right now. We're going to go into our effects controls where we have our bullet wound Mocha track. We're going to go tracking data. We're going to say create tracking data from the wound. So we need to turn that little gear on to make this work. Click OK. And then we're going to do corner pin with motion blur. Our source where we're going to be putting this is bullet wound. And we're going to apply it. And we don't know if it worked yet. Oh, it did. Awesome. Okay, cool. So there's our bullet wound. It's soloed. It's on his dome right now. We're going to turn off the original. And we need to use well, we might have to do a little work on this ourselves. Or we go back into the bullet wound itself and kind of like blur the edges or feather the edges or something like that to get this to work a little bit better. We can make changes like that whenever we want. So let's just see what this looks like. We will ignore the mat for now, but this is kind of what we got. So it's a little it's a little funky. So let's go into our bullet wound comp, and we'll grab the eraser tool. We'll grab a nice big soft edged brush, and then I'm going to click on my bullet wound, and I'm actually going to like, oh, what the hell's the button that control? That's it. Command. Okay, because command lets you kind of adjust the size of your brush. So I'm going to kind of like take the brush and just soften these edges up. A little bit, and then I'm going to brush down here a little bit, kind of get in here on this blood splatter and soften that up.
Just make it black and white, and it will probably blend a lot easier.
I think I'm actually painting black on this right now, so I don't know how great this is going to. No, it shouldn't be painting black because I was erasing. Okay, cool. So we softened that up a little bit. That's good. Now let's see what we can do with a little bit of color correction. So unfortunately, the lighting on this bullet wound is not the greatest because it's coming from like over here. You'd want something that's a little flatter lit for this, but we're just gonna F with it a little bit. So I'm gonna go into, I got my bullet wound layer. I'm gonna go into, where the heck are all my doggone, no, not content aware. I want my effects and presets dug on it. All right, effects and presets. We're gonna color correct this a little bit. So I'm gonna go into curves, throw that on the bullet wound. Obviously there's way too much red, so we got to pull red out for sure. So I'm gonna go pull red out, a lot of red out, and then we're gonna use some of our other tools here too. We're gonna push some blue into it. Push some blue into it. Then we need to get our hue saturation working because we've desaturated a lot of this stuff. It's starting to fit here on this side. The white side is a holy mess. So let's go and see if we can fix that. So we come in here and we double click on this, and then we go and we use our brush tools. So let's so I'm gonna grab the clone stamp tool, and I'm just gonna like take this stuff over here and kind of paint it in over on this side so that we don't have such harsh light on this side. I know I'm painting over some of the blood. You'd really want to find something that's not so funky looking, you know, but this will flatten out the image a little bit and make it work a little better. We can add some of these veins in over here too. Could look cool. So go right back over, and immediately it's starting to work better. The edge feathering definitely needs some help. So go back into this again and just grab my eraser tool and kind of really feather the shit out of the edges. We'll see how that goes down. Oh yeah, way better. Shut that off. We're getting somewhere, right? We can do a little work on the top. We can use our curves, hue, saturation, all this good stuff to kind of help make this work. You know, darken it up a little bit so it starts to match a little bit more.
Your overlays.
Go in. I think the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to grab effects and presets and go into levels and try to pull some of the white level out of this so it's not so like shiny. So I do need to see it without all this garbage on top of it. Okay, that's making it brighter white. I need to take the input white level and drop it. Dope. That's looking pretty damn good for like a 5-minute bullet wound. So, and then let's play it back and see what it looks like in real time, if it holds up or not. Oh shit, it's only got that one layer on it. Okay, 1 second. So I think we can fix that relatively easily if we go in here. Actually, if we go in here to effects, paint. And then what you want to do is you just basically select all the work that we just did and then drag it so it goes all the way across the entire run of the composition. And now this should work better. Let's go back over here. Yep, now it's looking pretty good. So the perspective change really isn't where it needs to be. So I'm just going to play this back and we'll see how it looks. I mean, it really works when you get up top and there's not as much perspective motion. Not terrible for 5 minutes.
No, it looks like something from the Sci-Fi Channel.
It looks like it does look something from the Sci-Fi Channel. So I mean, honestly, I don't know if I would necessarily try to add a bullet wound to this. If you're going to shoot a sci-fi film and you're gonna put a bullet wound on somebody, just do it practically.
Well, you could also
Just do it practically. Go buy a Wuchi online for $15 and then crappily put it on his face so that it's decent.
I'm really good at visual effects. Like,
Makeup, yeah, man. And so this is
With the pub crawl, I do like a slit throat or like a bottle out of my head. It's all with toilet paper.
Oh yeah, dude, for sure. Toilet paper works great. Toilet paper and a little liquid latex and some blood.
Yep.
Boom, baby.
I got
Works
all
great.
blood
you could
scab.
possibly do that out of 3D.
All right, that ends this particular lecture.